So, equivocation in the church. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And when I say equivocation in the church, I don't necessarily mean equivocation in like church leadership. What I mean is equivocation in the church body. This is a back-to-back recording, right? I started recording about history and I ended up on another topic that I wanted to also address, but I was at the limit of my time. So I watched a podcast last night where somebody said with a straight face, well, if you're a Christian, you should just be tolerant. So the thought of Christians as tolerant is an equivocation of church doctrine. Now, Christians should always be loving, and we live in a secular world, right? So we should always 100% be living in peace and union with our neighbor. And so in that manner, I guess if you want to define it that way, then yes, we should be tolerant. But ladies and gentlemen, being a Christian does not mean that you can love someone without tolerating their lifestyle. God loves us unequivocally, but in no universe does he tolerate our mistakes, right? When we say, no, God loves me no matter what I do, and we use that and we go about our day and we just do whatever we want, what we've done is we've placed ourselves over God. God is then a genie who just walks with us and loves us. No, God is the good shepherd. God is the one who stands above us and says, come be more like me, my unruly and rebellious children. Walk with me closer. Don't walk farther from me. Walk closer to me. And when you stray, I will come get you and bring you back. And we stray a lot. We do it all the time. But God leaves his house open. He leaves the front door open for us to come back. But here's the thing. He leaves it open for us to come back. Now, the gift of grace has saved us, right? We get into Christian theology and philosophy and we start wandering down a lot of these hallways of saved by grace alone. And that simply means saved by grace alone is not an excuse to do whatever you want. That's sort of the key piece of theology that goes missing. When you're saved by grace, you are called to reject your sinful life, not tolerate your sinful life, to reject it. And you are called to walk in the world, but separate from the world. In the world, but separate from the world. And this is not a call against gay people, transgender people. This is a call against really everybody, because we're all screwing up, and I screw up, right? I screw up all the time. And I get the key difference is that once you become a Christian, you hate your sin. And you think about it and you think about it and you realize what you need to do to become better. And you get better because you work on it. You work on yourself. Now I've started reading a book called The Screwtape Letters. And in the Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis highlights the ways in which the enemy, the devil writ large, takes pieces of Christianity and secularizes them in order to make the secular world seem all that much more appealing, right? Like there's these big movements now about working on yourself and really going to therapy and doing the work. These are Christian ideas that are now being based in secular reasoning, but without the Christian backing, meaning what does doing the work actually look like without the backing of the objective truth of what is right and wrong with God? My dad and I argue about religion sometimes, and it's fun. I enjoy it. But my dad and I argue from a place of where we both believe in God and we both believe in right and wrong. My dad and I can agree on objective truth. We nitpick on the edges, and that's good. That's between good brothers and sisters. That's what you do. You nitpick on the edges about how to grow as people. I nitpick with my charismatic brothers and sisters about things like gifts of the Spirit. I watched a podcast the other day where this girl said Christians are losing people to the spiritual movements of the world, and we need to refine the spirituality of Christianity. No, we don't. And now this may be a disagreement between a good Christian brother and sister, but I actually think it's an argument between perhaps a slightly more mature, with a little bit more gray in my beard, Christian and a young person who I think is very well-meaning, but needs to be corrected a little bit. Christianity does not need to conform to the world. Christianity cannot conform to the world, because the world is part of what Christianity says to walk away from, to reject. Now, we walk in the world, but separate from it, as I said, and that's very difficult. That is not a tolerant lifestyle. It should be loving, but it is not tolerant. I am loving of my, I don't have a Church of Satan neighbor, but if I did, I would be very loving of my Church of Satan neighbor. But in no universe would I welcome that faith practice into my home. I am not tolerant of that faith practice. But would I hang out with them in an outside setting? Would I preach gospel to them? I absolutely would. Would I argue with them about their faith? I would. I would have that discussion because I do not fear them, because I don't fear anybody. I am loving but not tolerant is a very thin line to walk, because loving easily falls into tolerance. Tolerance falls into this sort of lackadaisical practice of just, okay, everything's fine. Everything's not fine. I just talked about in the last podcast how we no longer can even agree on what objective truth is. A couple podcasts ago, I talked about how we no longer even know what right and wrong is, and we're losing the base morality that leads us to stop doing things like, murdering people. We're losing the ground here. And we're losing the ground because Christianity has started to, Christian doctrine has not. Christian people have started to conform their practice of the religion to the world because it makes it feel better. Excuse me. Now, some people are convicted about things and some people are not convicted about things. And Paul says in his letters that, don't do things that you're convicted of. But if somebody's not convicted of something that you are not convicted of, don't expect them to do the same thing you do. But he was talking about things like eating bacon, right? The Gentiles ate bacon, and Paul's like, that's not the difference. That's not the difference in the belief of Christ. Eat the bacon. I'm using bacon as a metaphor for things that went against Jewish law. But you have to understand that just as Christianity is not tolerant, but it is loving, we can be in the world loving of everybody, but we can correct things. When we correct people, it is by its nature intolerant. Look, you want to live whatever life you want to live, go live it. I can't stop you. I can't agree with it, but I can't stop you. When you come to me and ask me for advice, I will give you advice. I will pray for you. I will love on you. But I will also, and when you ask me, what mistake have I made recently? I'll tell you about every mistake I've made recently. I'll list them number by number. But don't start equivocating, particularly in matters of objective truth. To my Muslim brothers and sisters, if you think to yourself, no, the Islamic faith is the correct faith, well, then don't equivocate on that. If it gives you an objective basis of truth, then we can have that discussion. My Jewish brothers and sisters, same thing. My Church of Satan brothers and sisters, we should probably have a deeper discussion on the meaning of some objective truths that you guys believe in. I understand that Church of Satan is really more of an ironic name, but we can have some discussions on that. I will be praying for you in many ways. Guys, look, good and evil exists in the world. This episode in particular, it was probably more for my Christian brothers and sisters to remember that you can be loving without being tolerant. Because God is certainly loving of us, but not tolerant of our sin. Be like the Good Shepherd. Anyways, I'm overtime. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.